Janelle from Painted, and today we're going to talk about Miss Mustard Seed's milk paint. So the first thing I want to tell you guys is a little bit about what milk paint actually is. First, it's different than what you might be normally working with because it comes in a powder form. So in order to make the paint, you have to mix it with water. So unlike traditional paints that already come pre-mixed, with milk paint, you must mix it first yourself. Now there's some great benefits to that. First of all, that means there's an indefinite shelf life. The stuff never expires. So you only mix what you need for your project. So I would never go ahead and take this whole bag and pour it into a container and then add my water, because a little bit of milk paint goes a very long way. So milk paint does come in 3 different sizes. It comes in a sample size. And with this, it's really truly just a sample. There's about 4 tablespoons in it, so it gives you a great idea of the color that you might be interested in, but it's not enough to do like a chair or a small project. It also comes in a quart-size bag, which is what I have here. And then some retailers carry it as well in a 2-quart. So if you do have a local retailer, check with them first to make sure they carry it in the large size, because some do and some don't. I have all of these on my website and available for you guys if you're interested. But let's back up a little bit and back to the indefinite shelf life. Once you mix the milk paint with water, then it does have a shelf life. And it's actually a shorter shelf life than what you would expect, because one of the ingredients in the milk paint is casein. And casein is how it comes from milk, and that's how it got the name milk paint, because that protein will actually spoil over time. So what I tell my customers is only mix what you need, and if you need more, mix more. Because once the milk paint is mixed, then it does have a shelf life. And I like to use my milk paint within those first couple days, because afterwards it will actually spoil. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But milk paint is just 5 simple ingredients. It comes with, in the bag, it comes in all different colors, and we'll talk about those too. But the 5 ingredients are clay, limestone, chalk, casein, that protein we just talked about, and then natural and synthetic pigments, which gives it its different colors. So if you're looking for a healthy, non-toxic, non-VOC paint, milk paint is a great option for you. So the milk paint comes in a variety of colors, starting with a bright white, and then there's really just a nice color palette. They have both their classic collection along with European inspired colors. And they also just introduced a brand new color that I'd like to show you guys. So this is Aviary, and Aviary was just released this year, and it's the newest color in the line. And just so that you guys can understand my sample boards, the center is the actual true color, and then on the right-hand side we have it with antiquing wax, and on this side we have it with white wax. But just so you guys get a good idea, this center right here, this is Aviary. So I think the best way to start off is to start at the basics, and the basics would start with mixing. And what I'm going to choose to mix up for you guys are 2 colors in the line. One, Farmhouse White, so you can kind of see what it's like to mix a white, and then the other one is Tricycle. Now, just this year, just really recently, the manufacturer, Homestead House, who makes Miss Mustard Seed's milk paint, recently just changed the formula of Tricycle so that it's easier for our customers to mix, because there were a little bit of hiccups when it came to mixing Tricycle. Now, I still, for example, have some of that older inventory, and I'm sure if any of you have tried it, you've used that one as well. And maybe if you order it today from someone, or you pick up a bag at your local merchant, it might still be that old stock. So I thought I want to show you guys what the hardest way would be for mixing, along with what you should normally expect. And then, in the future, this won't even be an issue anymore, because all of us retailers will all have the new formulation. So what we're going to mix today will be Tricycle, which is the bright red in the line, along with Farmhouse White. So let me show you guys what it's like to mix milk paint, which is the first step you need to do whenever painting a piece of furniture. So I decided to pull 2 colors that I think are very important to talk about. I pulled Tricycle, the red in the line, along with Farmhouse White, which is the newest white in the line. And the reason that I pulled these two, and I wanted to show you guys a little bit more, is I want to first point out that Tricycle mixes differently than the other milk paints, in my opinion. You're going to notice that when you add the powder to the water, it doesn't want to incorporate the exact same way as the other colors. The other colors incorporate very easily, versus the pigments in Tricycle tend to sit on top of the water. So that's why I chose this one. And then I also chose Farmhouse White because it is a bright white. It's actually not the whitest in the line, Ironstone is, but I chose this one because I want to show you also about coverage. Now, whenever we're doing milk paint, if you're milk painting on a raw wood surface, such as this spindle, milk paint is ideal. It will never chip, it will absorb into the surface beautifully. Now, if you're working over a previously finished surface, and we're going to do more about evaluating our surface later in the series, that's when we would be adding the bonding agent. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to show you guys how the milk paint pigments can vary when it comes to mixing. So whenever I'm mixing milk paint, I always start with my water. And what I'm going to do is I do equal parts water to milk paint. So I'm going to do, this is a tablespoon, I'm going to do a tablespoon of water to a tablespoon of the paint for each one. And these are obviously, this isn't a lot of paint. It might be a little bit hard for me to stir this, so I might have to add, I'm just going to go ahead and do 2 of each, just so I can give you guys a really good idea of what it's going to be like when you work with it. So I'm going to go 2 of the water, which means I have to do 2 of the powder. And another thing, when you're working with the Tricycle, it stains very easily. When you receive your package of new milk paint, you're going to notice that it has an additional bag inside of this bag. So open it with caution. And honestly, a lot of times I like to wear gloves, but I don't have them handy right now, so I am just going to go ahead and put it in. So I'm going to do 2 scoops of the powder to my water. Now, I don't want you guys to freak out and think, oh my gosh, my measurements are not exact, this isn't going to work. It's not a science, and especially when you start to make your paint, you're going to be able to gauge if you like its consistency too. If you feel like it's too thick, you just add some more water. If you feel like it's too runny and too thin, then obviously you add more powder. So now I'm going to repeat the process and do 2 of our Farmhouse White. And this is the part that I wanted to show you guys. With the mixing, I want you to see, when I'm mixing the Farmhouse White, you can tell right away the powder easily incorporates into my water. It's easy. I'm just using this little whisk and I'm not having any problem whatsoever. And what I do is I just mix it till there's no more clumps, and then I let it rest. And that would be the time when I'd go ahead and prep my furniture piece. I like to let my milk paint rest for at least 15 minutes, and then I go ahead and I stir again to reincorporate the minerals prior to painting. But what I want to show you, and let me grab another whisk real quick. What I want to show you is when I try to mix the Tricycle, the red in the line, I want you to notice how the pigments are sitting on top of the water. I am still mixing with the same intensity as I did, and I hope you guys can see this, but the pigments are just sitting on top. They are not wanting to incorporate. That's why I highly recommend you use a milk paint, the mixer, when you do this, or sometimes with the red it's even easier to put it in a mason jar and shake it up and try to incorporate it that way. Oh, and I do have bad news. I did find out too that the mixer is retired. So if you have a local merchant, I highly, highly recommend you go and pick one of these up or you order one online. So you just want to pounce your mixer. And this works a lot easier if you're working in a cup and not a narrow bowl. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this without making a mess. Let's just try. But what you do is you want to pounce your pouncer like this. So if I was working in a cup, I'd have the sides to prevent the splashing. Let me see if I go this way, maybe I have more control. Yeah. But you can see with, oh, I'm making a mess. You can see with the power of the mixer, it's actually making the pigments go and incorporate into the water, which is what we want. And I have a very hard time doing that when I'm mixing it by hand with either a spoon or the little whisk. I'm going to try now that it's starting to go down to use the whisk just because I'm making a huge mess here. And it's still wanting to sit on the top. And honestly, I think Tricycle is probably the only color that, in my opinion, is a little bit challenging to mix. And it's just the initial part. And if you mix it, like I said, in a cup, then this wouldn't even be an issue. It'd be way easier. I just wanted something where you guys can actually see what I'm doing, and that's why I chose a wide open bowl. But normally I would not be painting out of a bowl like this. But now you can see that it's incorporating right. And we would do the same thing. We'd want to make sure all of the powder is dissolved into the water, and then let the milk paint sit for at least 15 minutes prior to painting. So I'm going to go ahead and let that sit as well. So I've allowed the milk paint to rest for a while. So if this was a piece of furniture, now what I would do is I would go ahead and I would stir my milk paint again. And then I would begin painting. And then throughout the painting process, I would continuously, once in a while, go ahead and re-stir my milk paint. Because milk paint, like I said before, it's made of the 5 simple ingredients, but those ingredients will start to settle, the weight of them will settle to the bottom. So you want to mix them, and that'll also promote more even coverage when it comes to your color consistency, so that you don't have streaking. Because they're natural pigments, you know, some of the colors might be made up with some blues and some yellows, and if you're not properly mixing them, such as like the boxwood, the green in the line, you're gonna notice when you're painting that you're gonna see some streaking. And then again, same with the red. I would go ahead and I would re-stir the Tricycle. And then what I wanted to tell you guys is, in general, a good rule of thumb is mix your paint to water in equal parts. If for some reason you feel like the paint is still way too thin, or you're not satisfied with the coverage that it's getting, that's when you can add more powder. So I'm going to just show you, we'll go with the, oh crud. We're going to go with the Farmhouse White. And I'm just going to show you guys the coverage. And then if I thought it was way too thin, I could go ahead and add more powder. And honestly, I don't think this coverage is bad for a white, so I would just leave it with the normal 1-to-1, one part, you know, the 1 part water to the 1 part paint. So I wouldn't go ahead and add any more powder to this. But let's say it was really thin, like I'm trying to make it look thin. Let's say your coverage was looking like that, where it's almost like, you know, where you can see through it. That's when I'd say, you know what, go ahead and add a little bit more powder to your paint to get a little bit of a better coverage. But even with this Farmhouse White, the 1-to-1 on this light color, raw wood is looking nice. So that would be fine. So hopefully this video kind of gives you guys a little bit better idea on the colors in the milk paint line, and also how, you know, some of them work differently than others. And you're going to have to be the judge when it comes to mixing the paint, you know, how thick you want it, how thin you want it, but just in general, think 1-to-1 ratio and you will be fine. Okay, so here's going to be the first coat of milk paint, and like I said before, I'm using the red in the line. This is the Tricycle. And I just want to give you guys an idea of what it looks like when you first apply it. It is a lot thinner than like your traditional furniture paints. And a lot of times, depending on the color you're using, and I have added the bonding agent, you will get almost like a little bit of a pastel color. So right away when you start painting this on, it could be a little bit deceiving where you think that it's not, you know, like the white of the bonding agent has changed the red of my paint, but it actually has not. And when it dries, you'll be able to tell that it's the normal red color, but it does look a little bit almost like a pinkish, I guess we could say. So I'll just do a little part because I just want to show you guys and give you an idea of what it looks like. And every color does require, you know, a different amount of layers. And also you have to take into consideration the color of the surface that you're painting. So in this case, this has a really, you know, dark stain on it. So if I was using a white, it might take obviously more coats to get solid opaque coverage if that's what I was going for. But the really awesome thing about milk paint is it will self-level, so you're not going to get any brush strokes, but also you can go over paint that's wet. Like this section, obviously I just applied it so everything's wet. I can go over it many, many times and it doesn't pull off like your traditional furniture paints. So it makes the painting process incredibly fast too, because by the time I would paint, this is a rocking chair, by the time I would get this entire thing, the first layer on, even if this section up here was still, you know, a little bit wet and it wasn't fully dry, I could go over it again without any risk of it like peeling that first layer back up, which makes painting furniture with milk paint incredibly, you know, a very fast process. So I'm just gonna go ahead, let this dry so that you guys can see, but this is what I'm talking about. The coverage is not excellent by all means, and it kinda, you know, it doesn't look the best. It looks a little bit, almost like the wrong color, but once it dries, you get to see the true color. So I'll go ahead and let this dry and then show you guys what it looks like with the second coat. So I haven't even made it around this entire chair painting it with the first layer of tricycle, but what I want to show you is this is how incredibly fast it dries. Like it is completely dry to the touch up here where I first started. And because this chair was, you know, it was very old and very dried out and it was missing a lot of its, you know, previous finish, the milk paint almost took like a stain. And actually I think it looks super cool. My client wants it full coverage with some distressing, so I can't leave it like this. But what I want to show you guys is you can see like the milk paint is a thinner paint, but in this case it's almost covering as though it's like a stain. And that's really awesome because, you know, if you're working on raw wood, you can obviously, I think I've said it before, use it as a stain. But what I want to show you guys is I'm going to go ahead and apply the second coat so you can see where the coverage then starts to really, really improve. Once again, always remember to, you know, stir up your milk paint well because the paint will start to settle and you want to make sure that your color is even. So I always recommend, you know, frequent stirring throughout. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply my second coat. And instantly you guys can tell what I'm talking about. The coverage is way, way better. I do feel like tricycle is one of the harder paints in the line to work with. It's harder to mix and the coverage is a little bit not as great in my opinion than some of the other colors, but still, you know, it's beautiful. It's such a it's just a really pretty true red. And it does look amazing too with like the antiquing wax. But already you can tell, you know, it's getting out of that ugly phase and it's starting to look more like what you're used to with your traditional paints. And because I added the bonding agent, I'm not going to get that natural chipping that milk paint is so popular for. But I'm going to go ahead and allow this to dry so that you guys can kind of see what it looks like with the second layer. So you can see the paint has dried and it's nice solid coverage. And it looks very different than what it first did when we first applied our first layer. And to give you kind of a better visual, I thought it might be helpful to show you a dresser I'm working on currently. This is black, it's called typewriter, it's the black in the line. And on this side, you can see this is just the first layer and it's not looking the best. And then after a second layer, you can really see the nice coverage. Now, one thing to keep in mind when working with milk paint is it doesn't show the true color until you seal it. Milk paint is a porous paint, and typically I would seal it with either hemp oil or wax, or if it's a really high traffic surface, I would use the Tough Coat in the line. Now this black, when I seal it with, I'm going to use hemp oil for this, it is going to deepen even darker than that. So hopefully this gives you guys an idea of what to expect when you apply your first and second layer of milk paint and how it can really change its appearance and to not be intimidated. Because once you have it on, I think you guys will be pleased with the beauty in the paint.